5 years ago, Aidan Crow was more than just a mechanic. He was the commander of the elite Hawks unit, his call sign Storm echoing across battlefields. His tactical genius saved hundreds of lives, and his cool-headedness under fire made him a legend. But after a final operation where an explosion obliterated his squad, along with his younger brother Nate, Aidan hung up his insignia. He promised Nate, dying in his arms, that he would never pick up a weapon again. "You have to live, Aidan," Nate whispered, gripping his hand. "Live, not fight." Those words became shackles, binding Aidan to Loxton, to silence, to oblivion. His life now was as calm as a desert morning before a storm. Each day he woke at dawn as the first rays of sunlight pierced the cracks of his hangar, repairing old equipment. His only company was the hum of engines and memories that haunted him at night. In town, rumors swirled that Aidan was hiding something in his hangar, perhaps old machinery, perhaps something more valuable, but no one dared to check. The rusted gates, secured with a heavy chain, stood like a barrier between past and present. One evening, as the sky over Loxton blazed crimson, a knock came at the hangar. Aidan, wiping his hands with a rag, opened the door. Before him stood a young lieutenant in uniform, his gaze nervous, clutching a folder. "Aidan Crow?" he asked, as if unsure he'd found the right man. Aidan nodded, feeling an old instinct stir in his chest. The lieutenant extended the folder. "This is from General Wilson. We need your help." Aidan didn't touch the folder. "I'm retired," he said flatly, but the lieutenant didn't back down. "This isn't a request, Mr. Crow. It's an order. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., at the base. You're needed." Aidan watched the young man walk away, his heart pounding. He knew returning to the military would mean breaking his promise to Nate. But something in the lieutenant's voice, a note of desperation, made Aidan open the folder. Inside was a report about a missing reconnaissance plane in the mountains, 100 kilometers from Loxton. The crew, 5 young pilots, was presumed dead, but new intel suggested they might be captives. The rescue operation was too risky for regular troops. Hostile territory, treacherous terrain, and a lack of intelligence. General Wilson, an old comrade of Aidan's, insisted on bringing him in. "Storm is the only one who can do this," was scrawled by hand on the final page. Aidan tossed the folder onto the table and ran a hand over his face. Memories of Nate flashed like lightning, his laughter, his confidence, his final words. But then Aidan pictured the faces of those pilots, young, like Nate, possibly still alive. He couldn't turn away. Have you ever done something for others without expecting glory? Share your story. The next morning, Aidan arrived at the military base tucked in a valley beyond Loxton. The sun had just risen, and the air smelled of metal and gunpowder. 4 young soldiers met him, the team assigned to accompany him on the mission. Their eyes were filled with skepticism. "This is the old mechanic?" whispered one, Ryan, a tall kid with a smug grin. "What? Is he going to fix a tractor while we fight?" The others chuckled, but their commander, Captain Logan, silenced them sharply. "He's here on Wilson's orders. Do what he says." Aidan stayed quiet. He'd seen those looks before, younger soldiers thinking he was burned out, incapable. His awkward gait, old jacket, and silence only fueled their doubts. But Aidan didn't need their respect. He needed their survival. The plan was simple but dangerous. The team would fly by helicopter to the last known location of the plane and conduct reconnaissance. Aidan insisted on staying on the ground with binoculars and a sniper rifle, just in case things went south. "Seriously," Ryan scoffed. "Old man, stay in your hangar. We've got this." Logan agreed, ordering Aidan to remain at a lookout post on a hill 2 kilometers from the operation site. "You're our eyes. Observe and report," he said, tossing Aidan a radio. Aidan didn't argue. He knew they underestimated him, and he knew it was their mistake. The helicopter took off, its blades slicing through the silence. Aidan took position on the hill, overlooking the valley. The sun blazed, and the air shimmered with heat. He pressed the binoculars to his eyes and watched as the helicopter landed near the plane's wreckage. The team disembarked, moving swiftly and precisely, as trained, but something was off. Aidan sensed it before he saw movement in the bushes. A trap. The ambush erupted in a flash. Enemy fighters sprang from cover, opening fire. The helicopter burst into flames, a torch in the desert, and Logan's team was surrounded. Ryan's voice crackled through the radio, trembling with panic. "Crow, call for backup. We're pinned down." Aidan didn't respond. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He dropped the binoculars and lifted his rifle, an old but perfectly tuned Barrett M82, kept all these years. The distance to the target was 2 kilometers. The wind, 3 meters per second, southwest. The heat warped the air, but Aidan saw clearly. His eyes narrowed, his finger resting on the trigger. Memories of Nate surged, his voice, his promise. But this time, Aidan didn't hesitate. He couldn't let another team die. The first shot rang out like thunder in the desert. An enemy machine gunner pinning the team fell. The second shot dropped a sniper on a ridge aiming at Logan. Aidan fired with cold precision, each shot a verdict. The enemy, disoriented, began to retreat, but he didn't stop. One by one, they fell, giving Logan's team a chance to regroup. Ryan, crouched behind wreckage, shouted into the radio, "Who's shooting, damn it?" Logan, his voice now tinged with awe, replied, "It's Crow." Aidan didn't hear them. His world had narrowed to the scope, the rhythm of shots, the lives he had to save. When the dust settled and the enemy retreated, Logan's team broke free from the trap. The helicopter was lost, but the pilots they sought were alive, bound but unharmed, hidden in a nearby cave. Aidan descended the hill, rifle slung over his shoulder. His face was unreadable, but a quiet fire burned in his eyes. Logan approached him first. "How did you do it?" 2 kilometers. That's impossible." Aidan shrugged. "Practice," he said, his voice devoid of pride or boasting. Ryan, still pale, extended a hand. I'm sorry I doubted you." Aidan shook it, but didn't linger. He returned to the base, leaving behind the rescued pilots and a stunned team. That night, as stars shone over Loxton, Aidan sat in his hangar. On the table lay a letter from General Wilson, short but weighty. "Storm is back." "Thank you." Aidan folded it and tucked it into a drawer. He hadn't come for glory. He'd come for those who could still live. "Do you believe in those who act for others? Share if you do." The dust of Loxton settled on Aidan Crow's boots as he returned to his hangar after the operation. The night was quiet, but his mind buzzed with memories. Gunshots, screams, the faces of the rescued pilots. The rifle, still warm from firing, lay in the corner, a silent witness to his return to the past. Aidan sat at the table where General Wilson's folder still rested. He knew this was just the beginning. His promise to Nate had kept him in the shadows, but now the shadows were tearing apart like canvas in a storm's gusts. Have you ever felt the past calling you back? Share your story. The next morning, the base hummed like a beehive. Rumors of the marksman who saved Logan's team from 2 kilometers away spread faster than desert wind. Soldiers whispered, casting glances at Aidan as he passed. "That's the old mechanic," came the murmurs. "Impossible." But Logan and his team looked at him differently. Respect, mixed with awe, gleamed in their eyes. Ryan, who had once mocked him, now stayed silent, only nodding as Aidan walked by. General Wilson summoned Aidan to the headquarters. The office smelled of coffee and old wood, and behind the desk sat a man with graying temples and a gaze that had seen too many wars. "Storm," Wilson said, extending a hand. "You're back in the game." Aidan didn't take the handshake. "It was a one-time thing," he said curtly. "I did the job. I'm done." Wilson shook his head. "We need you, Aidan. This isn't just about saving pilots. We found something bigger." Wilson spread a map across the desk, marked with red dots. That ambush wasn't random. The plane we were after was carrying data, plans for a new weapon developed by our military. Someone on our side leaked it to the enemy. We have a traitor. Aidan felt his chest tighten. Betrayal. A word he hated more than anything. It pulled him back to the day Nate died, lost to someone's mistake, or perhaps someone's betrayal. "That's not my fight," he said, but his voice wavered. "It is your fight," Wilson replied, his eyes narrowing. "You know how this works. You saw what happened to those pilots. If we don't stop this, there'll be more traps, more deaths." Aidan clenched his fists. Memories of Nate, his laughter, his final words, flashed before his eyes. He couldn't turn away. Not this time. Wilson gave him a new mission. Find the traitor. The data suggested the leak came from the base, possibly from someone in high command. Aidan was to join a new team heading into the mountains to intercept an enemy convoy carrying the stolen plans. But this time, he wouldn't just be an observer. He'd lead the operation. The team consisted of the same fighters he'd saved: Logan, Ryan, and two others. Emma, a sharp-tongued medic, and Trevor, an engineer who trusted his gadgets more than people. They met Aidan at the parade ground, where the engines of armored vehicles rumbled. Logan extended a hand. "No nonsense this time, Storm. You're in charge." Ryan, though silent, looked less skeptical. Emma nodded, and Trevor muttered, "Hope you know what you're doing." Aidan didn't like leading. He was used to working alone, in silence, where every shot was his own decision. But this time, the choice was clear. Lead them, or they'd die. He spread out the map and outlined the plan. The convoy was moving through a narrow gorge, surrounded by cliffs. Perfect for an ambush, but also for a trap. "We have to be faster than them," Aidan said, "and smarter." The night before the operation was moonless. Aidan sat outside the hangar, holding an old locket, a gift from Nate. Inside was a photo of their family, their parents, Nate and Aidan, smiling against a summer field. "You have to live," Nate's voice whispered in his head. "But how do you live when betrayal takes those you love?" Aidan gripped the locket and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep that night. At dawn, the team set out. Helicopters dropped them at the edge of the gorge, where the air was heavy with dust and tension. Aidan positioned the team. Emma and Trevor covered the flanks. Ryan and Logan prepared explosives to block the convoy's path. Aidan took a spot on a cliff overlooking the gorge, his rifle, like an old friend, at his side. The convoy appeared at midday, the sun blazing mercilessly. 3 armored vehicles and a dozen fighters moved slowly, cautiously. Aidan watched through his scope, his heart steady. But something was wrong. Too quiet. Too predictable. He keyed the radio. "Logan, check the western flank. Something's off." Logan replied, "All clear. We're ready." But as soon as he spoke, the gorge erupted in chaos. Enemy fighters sprang from behind rocks, heavily armed. This wasn't just a convoy guard, it was an army. Aidan realized they'd been betrayed again. Someone on the base knew their plan and had tipped off the enemy. Ryan's voice crackled through the radio. "We're pinned down! Crow, do something!" Aidan didn't respond. His eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening on the rifle. He saw Logan and Ryan taking cover behind rocks, Emma dragging a wounded Trevor to safety. The convoy halted, but this was only the beginning. A man in a dark cloak stepped out of one vehicle, holding a tablet. Aidan saw him through the scope. Cold eyes, a smug smile. This wasn't just an enemy. This was someone who knew everything. Aidan took a deep breath. Distance, 1.5 kilometers. Wind, 2 meters per second. His finger rested on the trigger. But this time, he didn't shoot. He remembered Nate, his words. Live, not fight. Killing this man wouldn't stop the betrayal. He had to act differently. "Logan," Aidan said into the radio, "fall back to the northern pass. I'll distract them." Logan protested, "You can't handle this alone." But Aidan had made his choice. He slid down the cliff, rifle at the ready. His movements were swift, precise, like in his younger days. He tossed a smoke grenade, and thick white smoke enveloped the gorge. The enemy scrambled, disoriented. Aidan moved like a shadow among the rocks. He didn't fire, using his knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the enemy. His target was the man in the cloak. If the weapon plans reached the enemy, thousands would die. Aidan reached the convoy's vehicle where the man was issuing orders. With one swift move, he knocked the tablet from his hands and pressed a knife to his throat. "Who's your contact on the base?" he hissed. The man laughed. "You think I'll tell you? You're already dead, Storm." Aidan pressed the knife harder. "Dead or not, I'll find out." At that moment, the gorge shook with an explosion. Logan and Ryan had detonated the road, cutting off the convoy from reinforcements. Aidan used the chaos to grab the tablet and vanish into the smoke. When the team regrouped at the northern pass, Aidan handed the tablet to Trevor. "Pull everything you can," he said. Trevor, despite his injury, nodded and got to work. An hour later, he returned with results. Encrypted messages sent from the base. The traitor was in high command, codenamed Falcon. Aidan returned to the base, tablet in hand as proof. Wilson met him in the office, but this time his gaze was tense. "You're sure it's one of ours?" he asked. Aidan nodded. "Falcon. Find him, or I will." Wilson fell silent, but something in his eyes made Aidan wary. Was the general part of this? That night, Aidan sat in his hangar, holding Nate's locket. He knew the fight was just beginning. Betrayal, like a shadow, was closing in, but he wouldn't give up. Not for glory, but for those who could still live. He didn't come for glory, he came for truth. Are you ready to fight for truth, even if it costs everything? Share if you are.